Our second lesson in algebra is going to review and teach you some new ideas between order of operations. If someone were to ask you what the correct answer is to this particular problem, you'd have to make sure that you're following the order of operations. If I'm following the order of operations, I first look for parentheses. Since there aren't any parentheses, I'm done with that. I'm going to look for exponents. There are no exponents. So now I'm going to look for multiplication and division, and I have to keep in mind that I do those in order from left to right. So starting over here and moving this way, the first operation that I see is division. So I have 12 divided by 2. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite, so I'm going to have 30 minus 12 divided by 2 gave me 6. Plus I have 4 times 3 minus 5. I need to still finish my multiplication and division, so now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to rewrite again 30 minus 6 plus, we have, that's a plus sign, 4 times 3 gives us 12, and minus 5. So next what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add and subtract from left to right, just like we did the multiplication and division. 30 minus 6 we'll do first. We get 24. We have plus 12 minus 5. 24 plus 12 is going to give us 36 minus 5 gives us 31 for an answer. The reason why I go through and show you step by step is so that if we make a mistake, we can go back and see where we went wrong. Now, a common mistake that people would make if they don't remember the order of operations is to just simply cruise on through left to right and do the math. So they would do 30 minus 12, they'd get an answer. Then they'd take that, they'd divide by 2. Then they'd take that, they'd add 4, and they'd just keep going down the line. And that's how we would get the wrong answer. Moving on to the next slide, we've got the PEMDAS. And this helps us remember the order of operations. Some people say PEMDAS. Some people like to use a saying to help them remember it. And so I'm going to write that saying down. It is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So then you know that the P stands for parentheses, the E stands for exponents, the M for multiplication, and I'm going to use a dot for multiplication. Now that we're into algebra, we're going to try to steer clear of the X. The division, we can either have the division symbol or we could have a fraction bar. Ant is addition, and S for subtraction. Some people like to look at the squares this way for PEMDAS. And the reason they look at it this way is because if we're moving left to right, some people automatically assume that multiplication comes before division, when in reality we have to do it from left to right. So to show us that we have to do these at the same time, these at the same time, multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction, some people like to look at it this way. Now, if you were in class today, then you remember the song that we sang that went to Rihanna's song Umbrella. I'm not going to sing that by myself on here because I don't have music in the background, but if you want to come in and learn the song, then you can come in and learn the song. So we're going to start with some practice problems. The first couple of ones, you just want to make sure that you're following those order of operations. Since we have parentheses coming first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the parentheses, copying everything else down just as is. So we still have our 6 squared divided by 3 plus 9 gives us our 12, plus I have the 2 on the outside, 5 plus 3 gives us 8. So now we're going to go to exponents, that's right here. So we have 36 divided by, that 12 can come out of the parentheses because it's done, but this 8 has to stay in parentheses. For those of you who aren't sure what the 2 and the 8 next to it means it's being multiplied together. So that's another form to show multiplication. So now I'm going to go through, I'm going to do multiplication and division from left to right. So I have 36 divided by 12, which is going to give me 3, plus, right here, this means 2 times 8. So I have plus 16, and that is going to give me 19 for my answer. For the next one, I'm going to do my parentheses first. So I have 12 divided by 10 minus 6 is going to give me 4, plus I have 5 squared. Now that 4 can come out of the parentheses because it's just by itself, but I left it there for now. So we have 12 divided by 4 plus, we're doing our exponents, 5 squared. Just a little side note, 5 squared means 5 times 5. When you square a number, you're multiplying it by itself, which is going to give us 25. Next, we've got our multiplication and division. 3 plus 25 is going to give us 28 for our final answer. The next slide shows something where it's assumed we have a situation like this, where there's parentheses on the top and there's parentheses on the bottom. Now we don't have to show the parentheses, but we do have to do this one a certain way. We're going to do everything, we're going to simplify everything on the top, we're going to simplify everything on the bottom, and then since the fraction bar means division, at the very end we're either going to simplify our fraction or divide. So the top only has addition and subtraction, so I can go from left to right. 6 plus 3 gives me 9, and I've got 9 minus 5, which is 4. On the bottom, I have 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So I'm going to bring that down here. The most common mistake that people make is they forget to do the bottom. They'll just do the top, and then they don't go back and simplify. So if we have 4 over 4, we end up with 1 for our final answer. The next one, we have to go through and do our parentheses first. Now if you notice, this -7 is in parentheses, but there's nothing else in the parentheses with it, so that means there's nothing we can do. So we can just leave this as 9 plus -7 times, and then we've got to do the 32 minus 6, which is going to give us 26. At this point, we are going to have to go through, and we're going to have to do our multiplication. There wasn't any division, there weren't any exponents, so that's why we're moving on to this next. So off to the side, I'm just going to do 26 times 7. We get 182, but since it's a negative times a positive, it's going to be a negative 182. And now we have to remember our rules for integers. Since they're opposite signs, we're going to subtract. So I'm going to do 182 minus 9. And I end up with 173. Now that is going to be negative because our bigger number here is negative. So there is our final answer. In the next problem, you see something that looks a little bit different. And the thing that looks different in this problem is the fact that we have some brackets. Brackets are just another form of parentheses. So just like in one of the last problems, you'll notice that this -3 is in parentheses, but because there's nothing else in there, we don't have to do anything in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do my parentheses first. So I've got -19 minus -3 plus I've got a -2, and then in the parentheses 8 plus -4 gives me a +4. So I'm done with my parentheses, no exponents, so now I'm going to go on to multiplication and division. Just a little reminder that when they're next to each other like this in the parentheses, it does mean multiplication. So we have -19 minus -3 plus, and then -2 times 4 is -8. We've got addition and subtraction from left to right, which comes next. Remember, with subtraction, we keep the first, we change it to addition, we flip the second. Negative 19 plus 3 is going to give us a negative 16. Plus, we have a negative 8, which gives us a total of negative 24. The next problem, we're going to do our parentheses first. So I'm going to start inside. We've still got our 20 plus negative 4. In the parentheses, we've got 3 squared. Remember, 3 squared is going to mean 3 times 3, or 9. So we've got 9 minus 6. 20 plus negative 4 times 9 minus 6 gave us 3. We have no more exponents, so we're going to do multiplication and division. We've just got the multiplication here. So we have 20 plus negative 12, which is going to give us a positive 8. Next problem, we've got to do our parentheses first, so I'm going to leave my negative 3 plus 2 out here. Negative 6 divided by 3 is going to give us a negative 2. And we still have this little exponent on the outside. So I'm going to bring down my negative 3 plus 2, and I'm going to actually calculate negative 2 squared, because we have to do our exponents first. Negative 2 squared means negative 2 times negative 2, and that's going to give us a positive 4. Now, the common mistake that people make is they think it's going to be a negative 4, but we have to remember that a negative times a negative gives us a positive. So we've got negative 3 plus, we have our multiplication here, 2 times 4 is going to give us 8. Negative 3 plus 8 gives us a positive 5. Now this one looks really complicated. Just because it has fractions and it doesn't change the order in which we do order of operations. So the first thing I want you to look at is the fact that we have two signs. We have an addition sign and we have a multiplication sign. In our PEMDAS, the multiplication comes first. So we're going to do the multiplication first. We're going to ignore the rest. So the first thing that I'm going to focus on is this 3/4 times 2/3. Now, with multiplying fractions, no big problem. We have top times top over bottom times bottom. So we end up with 6/12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the problem. We've got our 1/3 is still there, plus now instead of 3/4 times 2/3, I'm going to write it as 6/12. Or I could write it as 1/2. So now the problem becomes this. We've got 1/3 plus 1/2. In order to add those, we have to have a common denominator. The common denominator is 6. So I'm going to write something over 6 plus something over 6 equals something over 6. To get from 3 to 6, we multiplied by 2. So that gives us 2/6. To get from 2 to 6, we multiply by 3. So I'm going to put 3/6. 2/6 plus 3/6 is going to give us 5/6. And there's our final answer. So you want to make sure that you stop and you look at what signs you have so that you do them in the proper order. The next one, we have parentheses, but in the parentheses there's nothing we can do, so we're going to go on to the exponents. Now remember, when we square a number, that just means that we have to multiply it by itself. So we have to take 3/5 and multiply it by 3/5. Well, multiplying fractions, no big problem. We have to do top times top, which will give us 9. We have to do bottom times bottom, which will give us 25. So we've got 9/25 minus 3/10. Before we can subtract, we have to have a common denominator. The common denominator is going to be 50. So we've got something over 50 minus something over 50 equals something over 50. To get from 25 to 50, we multiply by 2. So we get 18/50. To get from 10 to 50, we multiply by 5. So we get 15/50. 18/50 minus 15/50 gives us 3/50, which I'm going to rewrite it down here so you can see. Now this is where we're going to get to the level 4 type of questions where you're going to have to substitute things in. Whenever you see a number next to a letter, that just means that it's going to be multiplication. So these two right next to each other are connected by multiplication. The first thing we have to do is substitute in the given value. So instead of our x, we're going to substitute in a 4. So I'm going to put it in parentheses, 3 times 4, because they're right next to each other, they need to be multiplied. Then we've got minus whatever y was, which is 3. And then you go through and you solve using order of operations. 3 times 4 gives us 12, and 12 minus 3 gives us a final answer of 9. We're going to do the same thing for this next one. We've got to plug in our values for each variable. So 6 is going next to p, which is 2/3, plus, in parentheses we have 2 times y is 3, plus 5 times x is 4. I'm going to do my parentheses first. 2 times 3 gives me 6, 5 times 4 gives me 20. I'm copying down the rest. I've got 6 times 2/3 plus 26. Now this is the part where people might get a little confused on what to do. Since 6 isn't a fraction, we can make it 6 over 1, because 6 over 1 means the same thing as 6. Then we can do our multiplying fractions, no big problem. Top times top over bottom times bottom. Top times top gives us 12. Bottom times bottom gives us 3. 12 divided by 3, or 12 over 3, gives us 4. And we still have this plus 26, so our final answer is going to be 30. Moving on to the next slide, you'll notice that we have 3 letters right next to one another. Now remember, the x's are not multiplication signs. When we see letters next to one another, it means they're being multiplied together. So m is -1. We're going to multiply that by x, which is 4. We're going to multiply that by y, which is 3. Plus, we have the 2, and then in parentheses we have x plus y, or 4 plus 3. I'm going to do what's inside the parentheses first. 4 plus 3 gives me 7. And I still have this -1 times 4 times 3. I'm going to do my multiplication now. -1 times 4 is -4, times 3 is -12, plus 2 times 7 is 14. So we have a final answer of positive 2. For the next couple problems, it's important to remember that sum is for addition, difference is for subtraction, product is for multiplication, and quotient is for division. So you have to ideally set up the problem and then solve using order of operations. So this one says the sum of 5 and 7. So I'm going to show that, the sum of 5 and 7. And then it says divided by 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the fraction bar to divide by 6. Another way to show this, the same thing, would be 5 plus 7 in parentheses, making sure that that's what we do first, and then divided by 6. These two mean the same thing. No matter what I do, I'm going to get 12 over 6, or 12 divided by 6, and I will get 2 for my final answer. The next slide says product. We want to remember that product means multiplication. So we know we're going to be multiplying two things together. And since we're in algebra, we're going to use the parentheses to show that these two are being multiplied together. So the first thing that we're going to have in a group would be the sum of 4 and 7. Sum means addition, so in this little bubble, I'm going to put 4 plus 7. And then we're going to multiply this by the difference of 20 and 18. So remember, we're multiplying these two together. 4 plus 7 gives us 11, times 20 minus 18 gives us 2, and 11 times 2 is going to give us a final answer of 22. Now, if you want to put the multiplication sign in between the little dot, you can do that. If you want to use the parentheses, you can use that as well. Moving on to the last slide, it says the square of the difference of 11 and 2. So I'm going to find the difference of 11 and 2, which is 11 minus 2, then I'm going to square that. So I'm going to put the tiny 2 in the upper right hand corner. What that tells me to do is parentheses first, I get 9, and then I can't forget that little squared in the corner, which means 9 times 9, or a final answer of 81. If you have any questions on the order of operations as you're going through your homework, just make sure you email me, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. My email, by the way, is sullivan@milton.k12.wi.us. I hope it goes well, and we'll see you tomorrow.